COVID-19 vaccination campaign begins across the European Union. A court in the Central African Republic rejects appeal to delay elections. And 2 Afghan police officers have been killed in Kabul car bomb attack. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito, Ecuador. This is from the south. The European Union has announced a vaccine rollout across the bloc, even as many EU countries were forced back into lockdown by a new strain of the virus, believed to be more infectious, that has spread from Britain to France and Spain, and even as far as Japan. First doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine arrived in hard-hit Italy, Spain and France on Saturday morning, ready for distribution to elderly care facilities and hospital staff.
Our European vaccination days are a touching moment of unity and a European success story. Very soon we will have more vaccines once they are proven to be safe and effective. And the European Union has secured enough doses of vaccines for our whole population of 450 million people. But we also secured vaccines for our neighbors like Iceland or Norway. Vaccination will help to get us our normal lives back gradually. Once enough people have been vaccinated, we can start traveling, meeting our friends and family again, and have normal holidays, which we all long for. But until then, we have to continue being careful. We need to protect ourselves and our loved ones from the virus. Let's stay safe together. Let's make 2021 our year of European recovery and hope.
Spain received the first doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine early on Saturday as the country prepares to begin its immunization campaign. The country is to receive 4.5 million Pfizer vaccine doses over the next 12 weeks, enough to vaccinate more than 2.2 million people. The government expects to have between 15 million and 20 million people of its population of 47 million vaccinated against the virus by June. Vaccination begins as 4 cases of a coronavirus variants that recently emerged in the United Kingdom and is believed to be particularly infectious has been confirmed in Madrid. In Belgium, the University Hospital of Leuven has received the country's first shipment of approximately 10,000 COVID-19 vaccines from the Pfizer-BioNTech. The vaccination campaign will begin with residents of 3 nursing homes.
We received the first 10,000 doses this morning, 9,750 doses to be exact, vaccines from Pfizer-BioNTech. It's a very thorough preparation, and it went very well, as planned. Today we received the vaccine intact and in compliance. Everything was in order. We stored it in our ULT. This is a freezer that can maintain temperatures down to minus 80 degrees Celsius. This is the known temperature at which the vaccine can be stored. At this temperature, they will be stable for months. From the moment we thaw them, they are only usable for 5 days, so it requires strict timing.
Romania's Prime Minister Florin Catu has hailed the arrival of the country's first batch of coronavirus vaccines. The first doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine arrived on Saturday at a military facility in the capital Bucharest, and people across the country were due to start receiving the shots on Sunday.
This is an important moment. We've been waiting for this for a year now, since we heard about this pandemic and the discovery. The delivery and distribution of the vaccine in record time will help limit and eradicate the pandemic in a very short time. Of course, this comes to complete the measures that we already have.
Germany's Minister for Health has said Germany's vaccination campaign against COVID-19 is ready to go ahead on Sunday. He added that it will be the country's biggest vaccination campaign in history.
Autumn and winter and next year's Christmas should no longer be dominated by this pandemic. The vaccination against COVID-19 is an offer. It's free of charge and remains voluntary. I know from the feedback that the vaccination centers are ready to go. The vaccination teams are in place. Everyone wants the biggest vaccination campaign in the history of Germany to be a success.
The first 9,750 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines arrived in Greece on Friday through the Pro-Mahonas border station with Bulgaria. Inoculations will start on December 27th. The first will be performed in reference to hospitals in Athens. Greece so far has imposed 2 nationwide lockdowns since the start of the pandemic. The first in the spring kept the country's infection rates low. Authorities ordered the second in response to a rapid post-summer rise in reported cases. As of Christmas Eve, Greece registers over 4,500 COVID-19 related deaths and nearly 135,000 infections. The Peruvian Congress is set to debate a new agricultural law after the continuous protests that have been generated by campesinos on the main roads of the country. The demonstrations began after the legislature was unable to approve the resolution demanded by the workers. The agrarian sector demands that the agro-export companies increase their salaries from $11 to $18 a day. The Parliament's Economic Commission announced that it plans to meet virtually on Saturday morning to find possible solutions to the conflicts that make the farmers impatient. The increase of the roadblocks in the region of La Libertad in northern Peru has caused the collapse of local bridges. Moving on, Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro granted a pardon to a number of police officers who are in prison on charges of murder in the exercise of their duties. According to an official statement, the decree by President Jair Bolsonaro authorizes a pardon from criminal charges for all federal police, civilians, military, and firefighters who, in the exercise of their duties or as a consequence of them, have committed crimes, whether negligent or unintentional. This measure will also benefit those deprived of their freedom who have serious health problems, including pathologies such as AIDS or cancer. This is the second consecutive year in which President Bolsonaro includes a pardon for agents, including the measure in a bill that was vetoed by Congress. Brazil received a shipment of 5.5 million doses of the Chinese COVID-19 vaccines, raising the total doses of the CoronaVac vaccine in the country to 10.8 million. The nation's state-run Butantan Institute on Wednesday announced that the CoronaVac vaccine developed by the private Chinese lab Sinovac Life Science achieved the levels of efficiency required by the World Health Organization in trials with 13,000 Brazilian volunteers. The state signed a contract with Sinovac Life Science in June to develop the CoronaVac vaccine at the Butantan Institute, the main supplier of vaccines for the Brazilian Ministry of Health and the largest flu vaccine manufacturer in the Southern Hemisphere. Let's take a short break now. Join us again after this.
TeleSUR English presents a weekly program to discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the Caribbean community. We'll challenge stereotypes and unpack the diversity of the region through the analysis of unique cultures, religions and art. We Caribbean. Wednesdays. Only on TeleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. More news now. The Institute of Economy of the Workers' Union of Uruguay prepared a report on the estimates of the population's economic process and inequality for 2021. The entity estimated that the fall in income as a result of the decline in employment will cause a sharp increase in poverty and inequality. Members of the institution pointed out that next year's estimates are not encouraging and the process of improvement in the labor market will be much slower. They also point out that although the economy will probably grow after the pandemic, it will not reach pre-pandemic levels throughout the year. Mexican health authorities registered 24 people who developed some side effects to the COVID-19 vaccine developed by FTS. Undersecretary of Prevention and Health Promotion Hugo Lopez-Gatell reported that the symptoms were decreased respiratory activity, low blood sugar, dizziness and laryngeal spasm, myalgia, arthralgia, and fever. However, the official explained that the reactions can be a natural immune response to the body. Lopez-Gatell considered that some of these symptoms occurred because many people came to get the vaccine without having breakfast, so he recommended to eat food before going to the immunization center. The Central African Republic Constitutional Court has rejected appeals filed by the opposition to have this weekend's presidential and legislative elections postponed. 6 candidates have filed appeals for elections postponement, citing insecurity in the country.
The provisions of Articles 36 and 37 of the Constitution of March 30, 2016 to give precedence to constitutional provisions and to reject requests for postponement of the presidential and legislative elections.
And meanwhile, 3 United Nations peacekeepers were killed in Central African Republic, the UN mission there said on Saturday, as the government and its allies tried to fend off a rebel offensive ahead of Sunday's presidential and legislative elections. These Burundian peacekeepers were killed on Friday by unidentified assailants in Dekoa, about 200 kilometers north of the capital Bangui, according to the UN mission known as MINUSCA. Ethiopia's National Electoral Board reported that the postponed general elections due to the coronavirus pandemic will be held on June 2021. The Electoral Authority detailed that the general elections will be held on June 5th of next year, adding that the result will be known between the 6th and the 28th of June. Ethiopian government authorities said that the elections were to be held last August, but the health crisis sparked by COVID-19 and the rising tensions in Tigray region forced Parliament to postpone the election day for 2021. Turkey's Defense Minister Hulusi Akar on Saturday made a surprise visit to Libya to inspect his country's troops stationed in the North African country. Thousands of Turkish troops were deployed to Libya earlier this year to help the country's unrecognized government to fend off an offensive by renegade General Khalifa Haftar and his so-called Libyan national. The 2 sides signed a ceasefire agreement in October, but Haftar on Thursday threatened to pull out of the agreement if Ankara does not withdraw its forces from Libya. In Afghanistan, 2 police officers have been killed and 3 others injured after a series of explosions hit the capital, Kabul. The police said a magnetic bomb that was attached to a police vehicle detonated in western Kabul, resulting in the fatalities. The latest attacks came as Taliban and Afghan government negotiators held talks in Qatar, trying to hammer out a peace deal that could put an end to decades of war. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack as of yet.
The vehicle arrived here, we heard a blast. Half an hour ago, 2 people were inside it. One of them was thrown to the roof of an ice cream shop. The other one was thrown next to the tailoring shop. One man was wounded. I called the ambulance. The ambulance arrived and moved the wounded to the hospital.
Israel has carried out airstrikes on several sites in the Gaza Strip. The airstrike targets included a rocket manufacturing facility and training and a military post belonging to Hamas, the militant group ruling Gaza. According to media reports, the strikes caused damage to buildings in Gaza City, but no casualties have been reported. The attacks came after various rockets were fired on Friday towards the Israeli coastal city of Ashkelon. Israeli air defenses intercepted them, and while no Palestinian group in Gaza has claimed responsibility for the rocket fire, the incident broke months of cross-border calm. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi and the U.S. Special Representative for Iraq, Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, attended Christmas Eve Mass at Baghdad's Our Lady of Salvation Church in a show of support for the Christian community. Christians across Iraq have lived in fear for a decade since the 2010 attack on the church at a time when its Catholic congregation was celebrating a Sunday Mass. The assault carried out by ISIS was the deadliest ever recorded against Iraq's Christians conditions. 68 people were killed and 80 wounded. Al-Kadhimi said authorities were working hard to protect them and to return the displaced to their homes. The exact number of Christians in Iraq is unclear, but they are thought to be several hundred thousand.
The Muslim Christian Brotherhood in Iraq was and still is a model of fraternity and a standard for patriotism. We are working very hard to protect this respectable community and this blessed religion and to maintain its presence in Iraq. We are also working to bring back the displaced to their areas and support them so that they can settle and feel that they are the sons of this country.
Let's take one last short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. This Friday, a motorhome exploded in downtown Nashville, injuring 3 people in what police described as an intentional act. The blast in the southern U.S. city left buildings and the road surface charred, as well as glass, tree branches, and bricks strewn across the street in an area filled with businesses, restaurants, and bars. In a dramatic sequence of events that shattered Christmas Day early morning peace, police responded to calls that gunshots had been fired and arrived on the scene before the vehicle erupted in flames. Police spokesman Don Aaron said their attention had been drawn to the suspicious RV in time for a bomb squad to clear the area before the explosion. The spokesman added that several people had been moved to a local station for questioning, although no arrests or details of suspects were announced. The FBI said it is taking the lead on the investigation.
The explosion was significant, as you can see from the street there on 2nd Avenue. Now, the police department, its federal partners, the FBI, ATF, are conducting a large-scale investigation to this point. We do believe that the explosion was an intentional act place throughout the day. Our police officers, with the assistance of the Tennessee Highway Patrol, are conducting a shutdown, if you will, of the downtown area while we assess this entire situation. So traffic in the downtown area from the interstate system, really, and in the immediate downtown area is going to be restricted as our teams attempt to assess exactly what's taken place, who may be involved, etc.
Energy Innovation CEO Hal Harvey said the U.S. will step up its commitment of eliminating carbon dioxide when President-elect Joe Biden takes office.
It's my opinion that Trump was a disaster on the environment. However, he was not very careful. And so almost every action he took can be reversed very quickly. So I think we will be back on track. I think we can think of this as 4 lost years, but we will recover. In the meantime, most energy and climate policy is decided state by state, and the states have very strong energy and climate policies. And then clean energy technology is getting cheaper. So we have actually made a lot of progress, even though we did not have any help from Washington. Most important way to think about energy and climate policy is sector by sector. So the easiest, fastest, and cheapest sector to reduce carbon, to eliminate carbon, is the electricity grid. And there are now many, many US utilities who are shutting down their coal plants and switching to solar and wind, and also geothermal and hydro and so forth. So there are commitments from many utilities to eliminate carbon dioxide altogether by 2035. And this is also the goal that President-elect Biden campaigned on. The next challenge is electric vehicles. If you have zero carbon electricity and an electric vehicle, then you have zero carbon transportation. And here there is what I would call a very healthy race between China and the United States. New vehicles, more and more of them sold, are electric. In California, they will not allow an internal combustion engine to be sold after 2035. I think China has something like a 60% EV sales by 2030.
Residents of Madeira face an unprecedented Christmas day with severe floods and rock slides causing damage in the north part of the Portuguese island. Local media reported that dozens of people were evacuated from their homes and at least one house was completely destroyed. So far, authorities have not accounted for any victims or missing people. Footage taken by a local firefighter from inside his car showed streams of water flooding roads and almost completely covering the cemetery nearby. On Friday, the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, expressed his willingness to resign from his position if that is the will of the Armenian people. Pashinyan was willing to call early parliamentary elections in 2021 and emphasized that he would leave the position of Prime Minister if his political alliance was defeated. The Armenian president's declarations come after a new protest of the opposition in Yerevan, the capital of the country, in which dozens of people were arrested. The protest began after a ceasefire with Azerbaijan came into effect in an agreement that is rejected by the opposition as it is considered not very profitable for the country. In Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko announced the dismantling of a terrorist organization that intended to perform an attack. President Lukashenko said the terrorist group, headed by opposition leader and businessman Nikolai Atujovic, trafficked tons of weapons through Ukraine and prepared terrorist attacks to overthrow him. Authorities reported that at least 8 members of the group were arrested, including the opposition leader. In this regard, the head of state praised the performance of Belarusian troops who found and neutralized the extremists. In western Russia, a fatal accident occurred this Friday on the highway between the cities of Moscow and Volgograd. A bus veered into a ditch and overturned in the Ryazan region, about 250 kilometers south of Moscow. At least 4 people died, including the bus driver, and at least 11, including several children, were hospitalized with injuries after the overnight crash. Police said the driver may have lost control of the bus after falling asleep.
According to preliminary information, a 32-year-old resident of Volgograd region lost control while driving a vehicle, drove into a ditch, and then got overturned. Unfortunately, it was kids who suffered the most. A 10-year-old boy and a 70-year-old girl, both patients were admitted to a regional children's hospital.
The Secretary General of the United Nations called on all nations of the world to create a global coalition for carbon neutrality.
War with nature. And nature strikes back, and strikes back with enormous fury. We all felt the consequences. In China, you had terrible weather events with dramatic impacts. But of course, China is a well-prepared country. It was much worse in countries less well-prepared in the African continent or small islands in the Pacific or the Caribbean, recently in Central America, devastating floods. So it's time to change course, but there is a hope. And let's build on that hope, and let's make sure that we create a global coalition next year, a global coalition for carbon neutrality, for net zero emissions in the middle of the century.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also be sure to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.